Hey, good evening, everyone. Megan Reckling. I'm going to give it a few minutes for everyone to get on. We've got a lot of really exciting stuff to talk about tonight. And I know that I made a great post right before I got on about something that became public this afternoon with our former illustrious DHHS director. So as always, as you guys hop on, drop me a note. Let me know that you guys are on. Let me know where you're from. If you have any questions, put them in the comments as we go. I will do my best to answer as many questions as I possibly can. If not, I always try to circle back and answer questions as we go. So again, share this video. We're going to be talking about a lot of important information tonight. So I'm glad you guys could all tune in. And if there's anything, I know this morning I had posted that I was going to talk about election stuff. I'm actually not going to talk about election stuff. We'll do that one either later this week or into next week because I think there's other things that came up that are more important that we're going to talk about tonight. So we're going to give it just a minute here as people hop on, and then we are going to get going. It's good to see everyone tonight. Thanks for tuning in. All right, let's get started. You guys, if you've paid attention to me at all, just to give a recap, I'm Megan Reckling. I chair the Livingston County Republican Party. I ran for state representative last year, lost in the primary, but I am a really big advocate that people should be more informed about what their elected officials are doing. They should have more accessibility to those who represent them, and they should have more access to information so that they can make informed decisions. And so I love to have Facebook Lives where I talk about things that are going on in Lansing. I talk about things that are going on the local level, maybe on the federal level. And one of the things that I have talked about for a year now are issues that have been going on related to the orders that Governor Whitmer has given, specifically involving seniors living in nursing homes and assisted living facilities like adult foster care facilities and other type of assisted living home facilities. Governor Whitmer issued the same exact orders that Governor Cuomo did multiple times. Can you guys, I know some people are saying that you can't hear me. If you guys, before I get going, and then I'm just talking to myself, if you guys can hear me, give me a thumbs up. If you can't hear me, let me know. Okay. Sorry, you guys don't want to see my hand, but I'll make sure. Hopefully my iPods are working. I saw one thumbs up. I saw another thumbs up. All right, so I'm going to assume my sound is working all right. Okay. And for those of you who don't know, every once in a while you'll see me sliding forwards and backwards. I have the awesome pleasure of living in an extremely old 1890s farmhouse, and anyone who lives in an old farmhouse knows that nothing is flat. And so my floor kind of slants away from my desk, and I work in a wheelie chair. And so what happens is I tend to start to roll away from my desk, and I have to pull myself back. And I wouldn't trade my old farmhouse for anything in the world because I love it. So seniors in nursing homes. So this is a really big deal. I have been talking about seniors in nursing homes and the orders that Governor Whitmer has issued for almost a year now. Coming up on March 13th, it will be a year since Governor Whitmer issued her first orders related to executive orders, her emergency orders, seniors in nursing homes. We know that she issued the same orders that Governor Cuomo did. We know that in testimony, Robert Gordon admitted that they were not counting, or they were not releasing all of the deaths. They were not counting assisted living facilities. They were only counting nursing homes. They weren't counting adult foster homes. There are still a lot of outstanding questions related to the policies that the Whitmer administration issued related to our seniors in nursing homes. I have friends who I know where their spouses and their loved ones, either a grandmother or their spouses, their brothers, their sisters, passed away in a nursing home after they caught COVID-19. Those families deserve answers, and it's something that we have to look into. About a week ago, I wrote an op-ed in the Detroit News calling for investigations. A couple of days later, 8 Republican senators issued a letter to the state attorney general and the U.S. Department of Justice calling for formal investigations related to Whitmer and her nursing home policies. This is something that we have to continue to talk about. These families deserve justice. So what do we find out today? This afternoon, in the Detroit News and in the Detroit Free Press, the basically separation agreement from Robert Gordon, who suddenly resigned out of nowhere from DHHS. He didn't go work for the Biden administration. He didn't go take a job somewhere else. He literally resigned out of nowhere. His separation agreement was FOIA'd by the media. And today we find out that he took a $155,000 payment, and he took that payment as an exchange for releasing all claims against the state. There is no bones about this. Absolutely. It looks like Governor Whitmer used taxpayer money to pay off and hush the former director of the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services, who for almost a year helped advise her on almost all of her executive orders. This is simply unacceptable, and it is something that not only should the legislature do everything they can in their power, and I don't know what that is yet, but the state attorney general should absolutely positively be looking into this to see what they can do. If the governor used state tax dollars to basically pay off and hush up the former director, that is unacceptable. We have Governor Snyder, who is being criminally charged in the Flint water crisis. Governor Whitmer and her administration should absolutely positively be held responsible, including potentially criminal charges, if applicable, for the decisions that she has made throughout this pandemic. The precedent has clearly been set. Dana Nessel clearly set the precedent when she charged Governor Snyder in the Flint water crisis that Governor Whitmer can be held to the same standard. And payoffs and hush money by our tax dollars is simply unacceptable. And I know there are a lot of people who talk about Nessel's not going to do anything about this. We can blanket all Republicans and we can blanket all Democrats. Over in New York, one of the main people who broke this scandal against Cuomo was actually the Democrat Attorney General. They do have a job to do. Dana Nessel does have a job to do. I would encourage each and every one of you to email her office asking her to investigate this. It's her responsibility to investigate this. I don't think the three of them get along. I don't think Benson, Whitmer, and Nessel get along. I don't think they have any loyalty there. And I think we need to do everything we can to push Dana Nessel to investigate the governor on the nursing home issue. So that's issue number 1. I would also contact your legislator, asking them if there is anything that they can do to stop this payoff in the separation agreement. I don't know if there is. It's not something that I've looked into yet, but it is extremely disturbing. Next. Anyway, did I miss any questions? Cheryl Ann, I don't know why only 8. That's a great question. I am so grateful for the 8 that did sign. Can't answer for those that didn't. I would encourage you to look up the list of who did and who did not, and to go from there. And I have no idea how my camera just got flipped. To look up the list of those individuals who did and did not sign that letter asking for an investigation. Contact those who didn't and ask them why they did not. Okay, Moving on, I want to talk about redistricting. Gonna be honest, guys, you're gonna hear me talk a lot about this issue. This is not the sexy part of politics. Redistricting is not the thrilling part of politics. It's not election reform. It's not the Second Amendment. It's not the red meat, everyday, sexy, fun part of politics. But redistricting is literally one of the most important things that happens in the political process. It is a redistribution of who represents us on the local and the state level. And so, although it's not fun and it's not exciting, and trust me, it is so detail-oriented that sometimes even I get confused by it, it is very, very important. It will literally define how, not only does it define the next decade, but because Michigan adopted the Redistricting Commission, how redistricting works this year will literally define Michigan politics for potentially the next 50 to 100 years. It's imperative that we, the people, that we, the everyday people, take part in this process. This process, although I don't agree with the Independent Redistricting Commission, here's how the Independent Redistricting Commission stays independent. The Democrats are going to be sitting there. The arguments that were used throughout this entire process, when there were lawsuits about things like, if you were a precinct delegate, you can't serve on the commission. If you were a former elected official, you can't serve on the commission. And basically, the arguments that were used were the commission is supposed to be nonpartisan. And although precinct delegates can't serve on the commission, they can take part in the process. They can testify in the process. They can attend the meetings and participate in the process. That is their part of the political part of redistricting for them to participate in. The Democrats, no doubt, are going to be sitting there at the table. It will only stay independent if we're sitting there with them. If we're not, because we're frustrated at the process or we don't like how it's going to work, it will become a liberal, Democrat, progressive redistricting commission. It will only stay as independent and in the middle as far as we push them that way. Because the Democrats are pushing them to the left, we have to push them back to the middle. So it's our responsibility to participate, even though it's kind of boring, even though it's not the fun and sexy part of politics, we have to participate in that. So there's a couple of things I want to update you guys on. One, call to action. About a week ago, the commission released their initial locations of where they are going to have meetings. So according to the Constitution, the language that was adopted, they have to have at least 10 regional meetings throughout Michigan to listen to public input. Where do the residents of Michigan, want to and believe there are communities of interest? So the Constitution requires that they have 10 meetings to hear input, at least 10. So about 2 weeks ago, the commission released an initial list of locations. And as you can imagine, most of the locations are not in what you're going to call rural, everyday Michigan. They are in what I call Democrat cities, and that's where the commission is looking to go. Places like Dearborn, Novi, Grand Rapids, Southfield, Detroit, Benton Harbor. Those are the places that the commission is looking to go. Ann Arbor, Flint, Warren, Port Huron. You don't hear me saying a lot of places like Weberville or Allegan, places in Ottawa County. So what I encourage you to do is I'm going to post the location. They have about 15 proposed locations, and I'm going to post an email address. They have a very simple email address, redistricting@michigan.gov. I want you to send, if you haven't already done so, send an email by Friday to the redistricting commissioners and ask them to consider hosting meeting locations in rural Michigan. Tell them that rural Michigan deserves to have a voice in this process too, and encourage that they relook at and change some of their locations. I can tell you that they were going to address this issue last week at their meeting, but they had already received a number of correspondence to those that responded to our previous call to action. So it's working. You guys are doing a great job. And they postponed their conversation until this Friday. So if you haven't already emailed the commission, consider just sending them a really nice email asking for them to please consider amending their proposed locations to include more rural locations in rural Michigan. So that's the first thing. The other thing, I am giving a weekly email of what's going on in the Redistricting Commission. What did they do? How many meetings did they have? I'm introducing the commissioners. I'm going to put a link later in the comments to where you can go and sign up to get this email. But then what I'm going to do is on my videos, I'm just going to quickly run through some of the things that sorry guys, dogs are going outside. Some of the things that the commission did. So they postponed their conversation on the redistricting locations. That will happen this Friday. This Thursday, they actually are going to hear presentation from 2 different vendors related to map making. They have to hire firms that are going to help them actually do the technical part of map making. And so they are going to listen. They received a couple of RFPs, and they are going to be hearing from 2 of them. It's going to be a longer meeting, and so it'll be about 5 hours long. So they're going to have meetings this week on Thursday, and they're going to have meetings on Friday. One of the big things coming out of the commission is money. They are absolutely going to need, probably need more money. They received a little over $3 million, and all of the previous commissions that have had this done in different states, and they're receiving budget memos, cost about $12 million. And so look to see additional conversations come up related to the commission on money. So those are the big things right now. Calls to action on, again, I'll post the meeting locations, the proposed ones. I'll post their email address. If you can send an email encouraging them to consider locations in rural Michigan, that would be fantastic. All right, so we've got Robert Gordon, we've got the Redistricting Commission. The other thing I want to hit on redistricting is a lot of people keep asking me, what in the heck are communities of interest? Here's the deal. There is no definition of communities of interest, and that's why this process is going to be so unique, confusing, uncharted, because there is no language in the Constitution and there is no language in law that guides the commission on what communities of interest is. So what the language in the Constitution did is it reorganized the priorities that the commission has to use. They have to have districts of equal size and population. They have to be contiguous, so they can't have a space between them. You can't take this township over here and this township over here unless they're touching. The third standard used to be you really couldn't cut apart counties or townships or cities unless you had a really good reason to do so. Now the third standard is considered communities of interest. How can we parse together communities of interest? Well, what does that mean? Literally, a community of interest could be farmers. It could be homeschoolers. It could be homeowners associations. It could be the LGBTQ community. It could be minority status. It could be Second Amendment supporters. Almost people who love the same kind of dogs. People who raise horses. People who breed cows. Literally, there has been testimony in other states where people say, well, I work here, I live here, and I shop here, so this is my community of interest. It is literally up to us, we the people, through our testimony at these regional meetings that the commission is going to have, to define what communities of interest are. That's what these meetings are for. We have to come up with that definition as a state, collectively. That is going to be so easy, and it's not going to be messy at all, right? So that is part of the unique problem with the Redistricting Commission. There is no definition of communities of interest. They get to make it up, which is, we get to help make it up. But at the same time, they get to make it up. And that's why our participation in this process is so imperative. Because you can bet your butts the Democrats are coming up with, just like this U of M study, the U of M study, the role of communities of interest in Michigan's new approach to redistricting. This was done by liberal professors out of the U of M to help guide the commission on what communities of interest could be defined as. And how the commission could go about seeking input on communities of interest, neighborhoods, economic opportunity zones, tourism areas, school district, outdoor recreation areas, communities defined by natural resource features, creative arts communities, whatever those are, media markets, historical communities, economic communities, racial communities, ethnic communities, cultural communities, religious, immigrant communities, language, and geography communities. These are all things that this report talks about being communities of interest. It is truly up to us, we the people, to figure out how we want to define communities of interest and do that through our testimony at these public meetings. So I know that's about as clear as mud, but that is really where we stand with communities of interest. There is no definition of communities of interest. And so that is one of the things that we get to define through this, is what are communities of interest and how are we going to use them to define our new maps here in Michigan. All right. Anybody have any questions on that? Who are we using to help us with this effort? Do we have to help to develop ideas to help our case? So there's a whole team, Cheryl. I'm working on putting together a whole team of volunteers, an entire team of people and legal experts and people who have worked on redistricting in the past, people who have worked on redistricting in other states, people from Florida and Texas, and people who were on the Republican side in Arizona and California working on redistricting, that we can pick all of their expertise and resources to try to help us through this process as we go along, to make sure that we are doing everything we can to push the commission into fair maps. Again, I am not an advocate that we need Republican maps or we need Democrat maps. We need fair maps. And so that's what I advocate for, is to make sure that we get fair maps where we Republicans and Democrats have the opportunity to run good candidates and have a chance to win. Do we have conservative professors out there who are willing to help us define communities of interest? Potentially, something that we might be working on. All right, so one of the other things that I wanted to talk about, and there's going to be a lot more this week coming up on redistricting. I want to talk a little bit about the later in the week about the Voting Rights Act. Man, will your head spin. I'm trying to find an expert to come on with me, because even I, just listening to information on the Voting Rights Act, get cross-eyed and try to figure that out. But I think it would be very helpful for people to understand, and even the commissioners have started to figure this out. They kind of thought, they just get to go on the map and draw a bunch of boxes and we could make things look really rosy fuzzy, until they add in the Federal Voting Rights Act, where you have to have majority and minority districts, and it gets very confusing very fast. And it's not easy. It's not easy to draw maps where you are complying with the Federal Voting Rights Act, and it's a big part of why Michigan and others, our states, have maps that look the way that they do. Michigan is also going to lose a congressional seat in redistricting. We're going to lose a congressional seat for the third, fourth, fifth cycle in a row. So, I mean, what does that go to say for our state? That we are yet again going to lose a congressional seat, and that is all based on population. The last thing that I want to talk about is something that's really important, and that is the Equality Act. This is something where this isn't about just being yourself. This isn't about just being gay or not being gay. This is about legislation being passed by Congress that is going to absolutely decimate our religious freedoms here in the United States. Something that we as a nation should cherish. We should all have the right to be me, but we shouldn't have the right to be me when your rights start to infringe on my religious freedoms. I strongly encourage all of you, if you have not done so, to please, please, please contact, email both of our federal senators, Debbie Stabenow and Gary Peters, about this legislation. Ask them to vote no. I know it feels like you're talking to a brick wall. I know it feels like they are never going to listen. But this is so important. We have to make our voices loud. We have to make our voices proud. We have to ask your friends, ask your neighbor, anybody who's a conservative, who's a Republican, who believes in our freedoms and our religious freedoms more specifically, ask them to please get on their websites and send them both an email asking them to vote no. You don't have to give reasons. You don't have to have a long email. Literally, all you have to do is get on and say, please, I'm asking you to vote against the Equality Act if it comes before you. One sentence is all it takes with your information. It is incredibly important to do. They are going to need 60 votes to pass this in the Senate. And so making sure that they cannot achieve that and making sure that our voices are heard, even if both Stabenow and Peters go to vote for this at the end of the day, we have all made our voices heard, is incredibly important. We need to do everything that we can to stop this legislation on the federal level. For those of you guys who have not heard yet, the Equality Act will do things like allow boys who identify as girls to enter girls' locker rooms, to play girls' sports, to be in hospital rooms and medical facilities with girls if they identify as boys, or as if boys identify as girls. It could allow them access to things like domestic violence shelters. It could allow them access to facilities where normally not only domestic violence but rape victims would normally go. It will allow individuals who are men, who identify as women, to have access to those facilities underneath this. It does things like teaches our children in schools young things about biological sex. It will change the law in all 50 states related to churches. It can change fundamental, if your kids go to a parochial school, the type of teachers that school will or will not be able to hire or will be forced to hire. It will force religious and Catholic-based organizations into certain medical procedures. It could make religious organizations do things like abortion procedures for medical facilities. It is a tool that the government can use over and over and over again to eliminate and destroy our religious freedoms that we hold so dear. So it is incredibly important that we make our voices heard on this, even if you feel like you're talking to a brick wall. So I am going to put in the comments the phone numbers and the web links to both Debbie Stabenow and Gary Peters, and ask you guys to contact them as well. The last thing that I want to talk about is a little incident that happened here in Howell last week. Cancel culture is a thing. It's become a popular thing. And let's be honest, it's becoming popular on both sides. The left likes to cancel, and so it becomes almost second nature that when people are canceling you, you just want to cancel them back. When the left is saying that you shouldn't have access to social media, and we shouldn't, there was an interesting study done recently that asked individuals, would you support businesses? Yes. Would you support businesses if they displayed a bias toward progressive political views? Yes. Would you support businesses if they displayed views towards conservative political views? And unequivocally, the response fell to no. People started to walk away from businesses if they felt that businesses were supporting conservatives or Republicans, and they felt that businesses who were doing that should be canceled. It's cool to support progressive. It's cool to support Democrats. It's not cool to support Republicans. And it's almost second nature that because people are trying to cancel us, that we try to cancel them. And in short, all we're doing is putting each other in a bubble. We're surrounding ourselves with people who think like us, people who talk like us, people who have the same opinion as us, people who only agree with us. That is no way that our country was not founded like that. If anybody has ever read anything about the Declaration of Independence and our founding fathers, they fought all the time. It was incredibly contentious. They challenged each other. This wasn't a bro club. They didn't pat each other on the back. They didn't all get along. It took a very long time to write the Declaration of Independence. It took a long time to write the Bill of Rights because they did not all agree. Cancel culture is a thing and it's got to stop. However, cancel culture has come right in our backyard, right here in Livingston County. And when I listened to the video of what happened in Howell last week, I literally fell off my chair. My mouth dropped open. For those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, last week on Monday, the Howell City Council, which is nonpartisan, had some appointments up before them. And there's a member of the TIFA board, the Tax Increment Financing Authority, who had been on the TIFA board for 20 years. He is a longtime resident of the city of Howell, and he sits on their planning commission. He was up for reappointment to the TIFA board. Suddenly, the city's mayor pro tem did some maneuvers. They were supposed to reappoint multiple people. He split apart the nominations. They passed the first nomination without any discussion, and they came to the second individual, Mr. Spalding. Suddenly, the mayor pro tem declares that he is going to be voting no on his reappointment because 2 years ago, Mr. Spalding exercised his First Amendment right to oppose the city's then failing Headley override millage. At which point, another city council member spoke up and said, that seems like a great idea of why not to appoint him to the committee. I agree with you. No further discussion, and the vote was taken. The 6 members of the city council all agreed and voted against his reappointment. The mayor of the city is the only one who said, guys, we all have our personal opinions. I think we should not reappoint somebody. There's my double negative for you. We shouldn't not reappoint him because of his personal opinion on a matter. To our commission, we all have a right to our personal opinion, and he voted to reappoint Mr. Spalding. One person on the board said, I think he has a right to free speech. The rest of the individuals silently voted to go with the mayor pro tem. If you don't know who the mayor pro tem is, you should go look at his public Facebook page. It's quite entertaining. Although he claims to be nonpartisan because he runs as a nonpartisan, he is definitely not nonpartisan. It is the most anti-Republican, anti-Trump, anti-white thing you could ever come across. It is clear that Mr. Spalding was not reappointed to the TIFA board, specifically because he exercised his First Amendment right. Let's get down to the details. Let's figure out what happened. It's not that Mr. Spalding went out knocking on his neighbor door saying, hey, don't vote for this. He didn't make a Facebook post. Back in 2018, he actually applied for one of the open city council positions. During the interview process, the council members asked him, how are you personally going to vote on the tax millage? How are you personally going to vote? And he ended up telling them, I think I'm going to vote no. In a candidate interview, he expressed to the city council members a specific answer to a question that he was asked. And 2 years later, the mayor pro tem believes that his First Amendment rights of answering the question that he was asked in a candidate interview is a great reason not to appoint him to a commission. Over 55% of the residents of Howell voted against the Headley millage override, which means that over 55% of the residents of Howell, according to the board members of the Howell City Council, are now ineligible to sit on any commissions because apparently you should not be using your First Amendment rights to oppose their tax increases. Just so you know, a lot of people don't get it, or that's a bad word. It's not that you don't get it. A lot of people do not know what a TIFA board is. TIFA board members, tax increment financing authorities, are special zones that can be created in a county or in a township or in a city. I don't know that they can be in a township, but they can definitely be in a city and in a county. Their board members are appointed by county commissioners, or they are appointed by city boards. These TIFA boards can raise your property taxes without a vote of the people or without a vote of those who appointed them. So the Livingston County TIFA board could vote to raise the property taxes of the people in the TIFA district without the Livingston County Board of Commissioners approval and without your approval. This is one of those very rare instances in state law where an unelected bureaucrat appointed by a city council or a county commission can unilaterally raise your taxes. So what does the Howell City Council, who's peeved off about not getting a Headley override and not wanting to reappoint people who won't vote for a Headley override back to the board that can raise your taxes without your say, what do you think the Howell City Council wants to do? If I were a resident of the Howell City Council, I would be watching my back. 3 of them are up for re-election this year. Know who you're voting for. Ask them, do you intend to raise my taxes through unelected bureaucrats that you're appointing to boards and commissions? And furthermore, don't re-elect anybody who isn't going to appoint someone because they used your First Amendment rights. We need to all have a good look at ourselves. Whether we agree or disagree with people, we need to get back to the point where we can all have First Amendment rights. We need to all be free to say what we want. Yeah, there's always a discussion. You can't yell fire in a crowded room. But we all need to be able to say things that we disagree with. We have to stop canceling each other. If we don't, our country's in a lot of trouble. It's part of what built our nation, is disagreements, challenges. We've got to be able to have tough conversations, stand our ground, vote our principles, but we can't be canceling each other. So that's what I got for you guys tonight. Some food for thoughts. All right, guys. I had a couple of calls to action in there. Redistricting, ask for meetings in rural Michigan. I'm going to post the proposed locations. If you can send an email by Friday, just asking that they hold a place in rural Michigan, that would be great. Make sure that you email your 2 Michigan senators, Debbie Stabenow and Gary Peters, asking them to please vote to reject the Equality Act. Our religious freedoms are depending on it. If you live in the city of Howell, email your city council members. Tell them that you're disappointed in that vote. Let them know that. Your elected officials have the right to know when they do a good job, which they rarely hear, but they definitely have a right to know when they're not doing a good job. So if you live in the city of Howell, send them an email and let them know that you're disappointed. You guys should have my email. I always put my phone number out there. If you guys ever want me to come and talk to a group about redistricting, if you have a group of people that have more questions, if you are in charge of a club or an organization and you want me to come speak, I am more than willing to do so. Send me a private message, send me an email. I would be happy to make time and come talk to you. Other than that, I hope you guys have a great night. God bless. And if I missed any questions as I was going through, I'll circle back and answer them afterwards. We'll see you guys all either later this week or early next week. Have a great rest of the week, guys. God bless. Bye.